Hey there everyone, it's JC. Welcome back to my channel. I've got an exciting how-to video featuring a new Altenew subscription service. If you are already an Altenew fan, you're familiar with the three very popular products: Build a Flower, released on every 1st of the month; Paint a Flower, released on every 22nd of the month; Mini Delight, released on every 15th of the month; and now Altenew has Craft a Flower every 7th day of the month. So Altenew's Craft a Flower is for you steel dye lovers. The coloring skill comes from your assorted collection of colored cardstocks. Layering these papers gives you a dimensional and professional looking flower without the need for stamping or coloring. If you already love the 3D flower die sets, then this subscription is a great addition to your crafty stash. At a discounted price, of course. These dies pair perfectly with your gradient cardstocks from Altenew, so they've eliminated the guesswork for layering the images. And like all of Altenew's color families, they span and match all of the coloring mediums, such as the crisp dye inks. So this month for May 2020 is the Craft a Flower Lily. The packaging comes with all the dies pictured as well as a layering guide. So you'll get 3 layered images and 2 additional stems in this month's release. Now I don't want you to be misled, Altenew's packaging does not include this magnetic backing, but I find it to be the easiest way for me to store these dies by attaching an adhesive magnetic sheet to the paper backing. I'll link to the sheets I get in the description box below, and I just trim them to size. Like I mentioned earlier, the gradient cardstocks work perfectly with these flower layering dies, and the layering guide shows which die cut to use for which color layer. Altenew's gradient cardstocks are sized to fit beautifully within the die cutting platform of the Mini Blossom die cutting machine. She is a crafty must-have for me, and I always keep her on my desk. The Mini Blossom die cutting machine comes with these 2 cutting plates, A and B. I supplement this setup with the metal shim, also from Altenew, and this helps cut through the layers of cardstock. I'll show you in a second. Now I used to use liquid glue and adhere all these layers together, and while that worked fine, I lacked the dexterity to hold the smaller pieces and not get glue everywhere. My secret is this double-sided tape. I use the Be Creative 65mm roll of double-sided adhesive because it is roughly the width of the Altenew gradient cardstock. Be Creative double-sided tape takes the place of my liquid glue for these intricate layering dies, and it saves me so much time. So to start, I've got the red Cosmos gradient cardstock pack from Altenew, and I'm going to pull out my Be Creative tape roll. I'll roll out the tape adhesive side up and chain each color of cardstock against each other on the sticky side of the tape. So first, I'm just lining up the edge of the cardstock to the edge of the adhesive tape. Then I'll work my way down the colors, lining up the edge of the previous color to the edge of the next color until I have my 4 layers backed with double-sided tape. You can save yourself time if you cover all your gradient cardstocks at once if you prefer. I use a box cutter to quickly swipe through the tape between the cardstock pieces to separate them. Now you're all set for die cutting, so here are my adhesive backed gradient cardstocks. I'm going to grab my favorite Mini Blossom die cutting machine, the accompanying cutting plates, and the Altenew metal shim. I'm going to start with the most solid layer of the flower die set. In this case, it happens to also be the lightest color in the gradient set. I'll place that cardstock adhesive side down on top of the base plate labeled A. Then I'll place my die on top of the cardstock, raised side down, and tape it in place with some cheapo washi tape. It may help to remove some of the tack on the back of your hand or touch it against your shirt if you're allergic to adhesives. I'll place the metal shim on top of the die, and finally the cutting plate B on top. This is the die cutting sandwich I'll be following from now on. I'll run this through my Mini Blossom die cutting machine, and there you go. There's your first adhesive backed base layer for this flower. I'll leave this in the die with the adhesive backing and work down the layers of cardstock following the Craft a Flower Lily layering guide. So the second layer coordinates with Coral Berry, the third layer with Ruby Red, and no worries if the backing paper comes off the double-sided tape, and finally Grapevine for the last layer. I've done my best to keep the adhesive backed cardstock inside the die as it helps me stay organized, but if it falls out, no worries. I find that leaving the paper inside the die helps with the next step of adhering the images. So first, I'll pop out the solid frosty pink layer and dry fit it with the die of the second layer. Think of it like you're looking through the clear stamp of the layering build of flowers to get the layers lined up. You'll see in this dry fit that the entire perimeter of the frosty pink die cut aligns with the coral berry die. So I'll remove the adhesive backing to the second coral berry layer and weed out the pieces, leaving the image itself within the steel die. Then I'll follow my dry fit guidelines and adhere the second layer to the first. Now I can just pop out the second and first layers, and now they're 1, perfectly aligned, and 2, adhere to each other. There's no need to hold sticky pieces of cardstock and adjust the layers like using liquid glue. I'll do the same with the ruby red layer, doing a quick dry fit to make sure I've got the die aligned properly. You'll know you're right on the money because the cardstock layers don't overhang anywhere on the assembled image. Then once I'm confident with my placement, I'll press the cardstock on top of the exposed adhesive and reveal another perfect layer. With the smallest grapevine layer, I found it easier to just hold the cardstock over the assembled flower to get it aligned properly. And there you go, the last thing to do is add the stamen and pistil layer with some black cardstock, and that finishes your first craft a flower die cut flower. Off camera, I went ahead and made 2 more flowers, just like the one I showed you. I'm going to take the leaf die layers and make some slight modifications. With this layering leaf die, I wanted to create a lily flower bud, so instead of cutting green cardstock with these dies, I'll use the red Cosmos cardstocks, just like the flowers, and cut the layers, matching the hue of the green layers shown in the layering guide to the red cardstock. So now I can supplement my lily bouquet with a light pink lily bud and help break up the symmetry of the flowers. I made a darker version of the previous lily bud with ruby red and grapevine, just so there's some color variance. Here's my draft arrangement. Now let's work on the stems and leaves included with the craft a flower lily. To help simplify things, I'm using the Green Meadows layering cardstocks, just like the layering guide. I've already backed these sheets with the same double-sided adhesive as the flowers. Then I'll easily assemble the pieces by removing the backing paper from the double-sided adhesive and aligning the smaller pieces to the base layers. I use this A2 outline grid on my Altenew cutting mat to roughly map where I want all the die cut pieces to go. Now I'm going to add another element of texture to these die cut pieces by adding my favorite splatters. I love using Altenew's pure white ink spray diluted with water to add speckles to the flowers. I'll do the same with the jet black ink spray for this wood grain background from Altenew's Rock Collection 6x6 paper pack. And once I have an arrangement I'm happy with, I'll take a quick snap with my phone to reference the placement when I move it to my card base. After adhering the black splatter wood grain background to my note card base, I'll assemble the flowers onto my card referencing the photo I took earlier. Now all I gotta do is remove the last layer of backing paper behind the base layers of all these die cut pieces. Alternatively, for added dimension, you can forego the double-sided tape of only the base layers of cardstock and use your adhesive of choice to arrange your flowers and leaves. Or you can add foam squares to add some additional height to your arrangement. To finish this card, I'll add this gorgeous sentiment from the Sentiment Strips 2 stamp set and center it on top of the flowers. Then I'll add some satin white sequins for even more dimension around the arrangement. Lastly, I'll add this bow to the stems of the flowers to finish this full flower front scene card. I'll be hand delivering this card, so I don't mind that it's got a lot of height. And that's how I simplify layering floral dies. I suggest you make the assembly process easier on yourself by coupling double-sided tape with the fabulous gradient cardstocks. I've got those materials linked below. More information on the Altenew Craft a Flower subscription service can also be found in the description box, and while you're there, please make sure you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all very soon, and have the best day.